She always sat in the same place, a secluded corner of the room, away from the conversations, away from the laughter, and far away from the judgmental stares. His name was Clara, but many seemed to forget. To most, she was just the poor girl. That day was like all the others, or at least it seemed to be. Another family lunch, one of those where the table is full, but the heart's empty. Plentiful dishes, raised glasses, empty words. Laughter that seemed happy, but carried something cruel behind forced politeness. Clara was there, silent, the simple clothes, the shy look, the withdrawn posture. He felt invisible, and at the same time, too exposed. Every time she picked up her fork to eat, someone would whisper. Whenever she smiled shyly, a cousin would turn up her nose. Every time I breathed, I seemed to miss. She was used to it. Ever since I was little, I knew what it was like to be treated like a nuisance, as someone whose how would be there. But Clara carried something a secret that wasn't his, but that weighed on his shoulders like an inherited curse. And then it was that the sentence was said, small, dry, cruel. At least we try to help, right? Because it's not her fault she came from poverty. The room froze for a second. Clara felt as if each word had been stabbed into her chest like a blade. Her fork clattered to the plate. The metallic sound echoed like a silent scream, but at that moment happened something that had never finally happened. Mrs. Olivia, the silent grandmother, who until then seemed oblivious to the provocations, raised her head with a burning gaze. His eyes, aged by time and pain, were different, firm, determined. She banged her cane on the floor. The sound was low, but echoed like thunder. The laughter stopped. The whispers stopped. Everyone looked at her, waiting for something. He arrives. The old lady's voice cut through the air like a sharp blade. Around
Clara,
slowly, surprised, turned. I had never seen Grandma like this. Nobody had. The silence was so deep that it was possible to hear the pent-up breathing of everyone present. There was something in that woman's gaze that was frightening, but it also commanded respect. And for a brief moment, even those who considered themselves above all became small before her. Today, you will hear what you never wanted to hear. The words came out as a sentence. Clara's eyes widened. She didn't know, but I was about to find out who I really was, and along with her, everyone in that room would be confronted with long-buried truths. Truths that out of pride, out of shame, out of fear, they had been kept silent. But silence, when it explodes, does not ask for permission. And in that instant, everything changed. Clara was only 17 years old, but the age didn't match the look. His eyes carried ancient silences, unspoken pain, stifled stories. She was the kind of girl who went unnoticed by many, but if you really behind a shy smile. She lived with her grandmother, Donna Olivia, in a modest little house on the outskirts of the city. Nothing there was new. The walls were already cracked, the sofa was old, and the gate creaked. But inside that home, despite its simplicity, there was something that others didn't see: resistance. Clara grew up hearing phrases that cut through. You have no future. You should be thankful you're still here. Weren't for your grandmother. At school, it was no different. Classmates laughed when she walked by in her worn-out sneakers. They avoided her in group work as if poverty were contagious. She learned early on that silence was a shelter and also a prison. In the family, it was worse. Sunday lunches became events of disguised humiliation. The cousins arrived with designer clothes and looks of superiority. The uncles always with empty advice and judgmental looks. No one asked how she was to hear his voice. No one. For them, Clara did not exist. She was the poor granddaughter, the worthless girl, the silent mistake that no one had the courage to admit, but everyone wanted to erase. And yet, Clara didn't complain. He helped his grandmother with affection. He washed the dishes patiently. I woke up early, studied, dreamed. Even with her heart crushed inside, she walked. Slowly, but with dignity. But there was something there. A whisper, an unexplained void. Whenever he asked, his grandmother would change the subject. Every time I looked at an old photo, there was a part of the story ripped out, hidden. And it hurt, because more than poverty, more than contempt, Clara felt the absence of truth. And I knew deep down that something was wrong, something that no one wanted her to find out. Have you ever felt this way? Ignored? Erased from a story you're a part of? Have you ever experienced the burden of carrying a surname and still being treated like an intruder within your own family? Clara lived through all of this, but what no one, absolutely no one, knew. It's just that the blood that ran through that girl's veins, it was stronger than the uncle's pride, cleaner than the lies told over the years, and more valuable than any inheritance. She wasn't just a poor granddaughter. She was the truth everyone tried to hide. And at the right time, this truth would come to light. What would you do if you discovered your pain was built on a lie? How would you react if you knew that the rejection that hurt you was planned? This is Clara's story, but it could be mine. It could be yours, because behind many seemingly perfect families, there are silences that scream, and people who, like Clara, are just waiting for the right moment to be heard. And that moment was much closer than she imagined. It was Sunday. The smell of home-cooked food filled the house, but the atmosphere didn't feel welcoming. In that family, Sunday lunches weren't. They were exhibitions. Who arrived with a new car? Who traveled? Who got fat? Who failed? And as always, Clara was the easiest target. She sat on the corner of the table near the kitchen, a strategic place, away from important eyes, near the dirty dishes. It was as if she was just there to fill a void, never to be truly noticed. The conversations flowed, the laughter was forced, the toasts were empty. While everyone bragged about achievements they barely understood, Clara knew what was coming. I knew that sooner or later a comment would come like an arrow, and she would have to swallow hard again, and it came. Aunt Vera, with her venomous smile and sly look, didn't miss the opportunity. It's a shame this girl doesn't take after her family, right? Break. She looked around, expecting complicity. And he added, with the same voice that he has destroyed so many times in a joking tone, neither blood nor money. A laugh spread across the table like a cold wave, first light, then loud. The cousins tried to hide it. The uncles not so much. Clara stopped chewing. The fork remained on the plate, and slowly she lowered her head. He didn't cry. He didn't talk back. He just shrank into himself. But at that moment, something that no one expected happened. Mrs. Olivia, the silent matriarch, always sitting in the same place with the same neutral expression, looked up. She didn't say anything, just looked, bottom, direct, TOC, cutting. The dry sound of the cane hitting the floor interrupted the laughter brutally. The table froze. The glasses seemed about to shake. The conversation ceased. Everyone turned to her. She took a deep breath, and he said in a voice that carried the strength of all buried truths, "He arrives." No one dared to interrupt. Not even Aunt Vera, used to being the center of everything. You speak as if you know what this girl represents. But it's time for them to know the truth. Silence and uncomfortable. Clara is not poor by destiny. She is not lesser. It's not a mistake. She is the only legitimate heir to what you value so much, but which they lost a long time ago: dignity and honor. The words sounded like a sentence. Clara looked at her with wide eyes, not understanding. The others looked at each other, confused, tense. It was as if a silent bomb had been placed in the center of that table, and no one knew how to defuse it. Aunt Vera, Olivia, please, tried to change the subject. Don't start with those stories. Everyone is trying. Stop it, Vera, interrupted the old woman with a firmness that no one knew she still possessed. It was the first time in years that the room had heard that tone. It wasn't a simple reaction. It was a warning. You lied. You hid. You stepped on. And now they laugh at the only person in this house who doesn't owe anyone anything. So listen carefully, because the truth will hurt more than any lie you made up. That moment, with everyone paralyzed, Clara, with her tears held back, Donna Olivia was preparing to reveal something that would be remembered forever, an ancient secret, hidden out of fear, protected by love. Something that would turn the entire history of that family upside down. Can you feel it? This tension? That breath holding because what comes next? It's the part of history that everyone tried to erase, but now, finally, will be told. The silence was deafening. The table once seemed like a battlefield where everyone had been disarmed. The looks were lost. The smiles faded, and the half-full glasses no longer made sense. Mrs. Olivia was standing, small in size, immense in presence. There was something in his gaze that no one dared to challenge. She was trembling a little, yes, with the weight of age, but your voice. His voice came out firm, like someone who has been carrying the truth that has been choked up for too long. Clara, the time has come for you to know who you are, and you. She looked around, staring at each face one by one. The time has come for them to face what they have done. Everyone looked at each other, confused, tense. Clara, sitting and not understanding, felt her heart race. She had never seen her grandmother like that. I had never heard that tone before. It was as if the whole house was about to collapse. And then, with a voice choked with pain, but sustained by courage, Mrs. Olivia said, "Clara's father, away, firstborn, he was expelled, didn't run, brought, destroyed by his own brothers." A whisper of astonishment ran through the room. They accused him of theft. They said he embezzled money from the family business. But do you know what really happened? He found out they were lying in business, money laundering, tax evasion, and threatened to report it. The response he received? It was a trap. Uncle Augusto, one of the older brothers, shifted in his chair. He was visibly uncomfortable. Aunt Vera turned not pale, knowing where to hide her eyes. They forged evidence. They spread the story. And in a matter of days, my son became a criminal to the world. He lost his job, lost everything. But he hasn't lost one thing, his dignity. Clara couldn't hold back her tears. His hands were shaking. That was the missing piece. The emptiness she had always felt now made sense. He left that house with a suitcase of clothes and a baby in his arms. You, Clara, he raised you left alone you with me when he got too sick. Then he died young, he, full of sorrows, and he never had a chance to clear his name. Grandma's voice faltered for a second, but she took a deep breath and continued. And I kept quiet, out of cowardice? Maybe, but most of all, for fear that the same thing they did to him, they did it to you. A deathly silence filled the room. The cousins, previously arrogant, lowered their eyes. Uncle Augusto got up and left without saying a word, trying to maintain composure, but unable to hide the shame on his face. Everything you have today, said Olivia, looking at everyone, every penny of this filthy fortune, it only exists because an honest man was destroyed to keep you standing. She looked at Clara, her eyes teary but firm. And now? Are you laughing at his daughter? From the only person in this family who is not to blame for anything, and yet it carries all the consequences. Clara could no longer hold back her tears. But this time they weren't from pain. They were from recognition, of belonging, of true. For years she lived as a burden, like an intruder, like a mistake, but now everything had changed. That wasn't just a revelation, it was a restitution, an answer, a rebirth. And you, who are listening to this story, maybe you can identify with Clara. Perhaps you have also lived in silence, being judged for something that is not yours. Maybe you've also been carrying around guilt that doesn't belong to you, touches you. If that, know that the truth, however painful it may be, always finds a way out of the darkness. And what comes after that changes everything. From that day on, everything changed. Not because the house has transformed, not because the fake smiles turned into sincere hugs, not even because the family asked for forgiveness, because they didn't, but Clara finally saw herself with different eyes. For the first time, she understood that the silence she carried inside, waiting was not empty. She was no longer that forgotten girl in the corner of the room. I was no longer the butt of jokes, nor the burden of family. She was daughter of an honorable man, a man who was silenced. But now, through her, he was beginning to be remembered. And above all, she was granddaughter of a woman who chose to love in silence until the right time finally arrived. Can you imagine what it's like to live believing that you are the mistake and suddenly discover that, in fact, you are the only truth left? That's what happened to Clara. She spent her whole life trying to fit in where there was no room for her, trying to please someone who never wanted to see her happy, and blaming yourself for a poverty that wasn't yours. But the truth changes everything. Because the truth doesn't apologize. She arrives, break down walls, mask ripper, and it reveals what is purest and most rotten within people. Clara didn't need to scream. She didn't take revenge. She just got up. With tears in her eyes and a pounding heart, she looked at every face at that table as if to say, "Now I know who I am, and you know what you did." From then on, she no longer sought acceptance. She didn't apologize for existing. She just followed, head on, with the strength of someone who carries the name of someone who is wronged, and the courage of those who carry their own name with pride. Donna Olivia, beside her, seemed lighter. as if years of pain had finally found shelter in the real. Tears that flowed in that room. Some call it justice, others call it destiny, but maybe it's just time, doing what he always does with the truth, putting it back where it belongs. And you? How many times did you believe you were small, when in fact I was only surrounded by people who feared his strength? How many times have you kept quiet, thinking the problem was you, when, in fact, the problem was the fear that others had of his presence? How many times have you cried because you didn't feel enough, not knowing that your story is too valuable to be ignored? Clara learned, in the most painful way, it's true, but he learned that the wounds we carry do not define us. What defines us is the way we choose to follow, even with them open. She didn't need anyone's approval, because that day he understood that his grandmother's love and the dignity inherited from the father were more than enough to sustain her. And you? What are you waiting for to free yourself from the lie? Sometimes all a person needs is to be seen with the heart, not with the eyes of prejudice, not with the merciless judgment that so many families practice between smiles, but with the sensitivity of someone who understands that what's missing in your pocket isn't always what's missing in your soul. Clara's story is one of many. How many Claras do you know? How many faces pass by you every day, carrying hidden truths, open wounds, and words never spoken? She was rejected for what she didn't have, despised by those who should protect her, diminished by people who thought they were too big to see her pain. But in the end, she was the one who remained standing. She was the one who heard the truth, and more than that, it was she who carried it with dignity. It's not easy growing up hearing that you are less. It's not easy to live with the silence of those who should defend you. But Clara teaches us a powerful lesson. The truth can be buried for a long time, but it will never be forgotten. She always finds a way to bloom. And when that happens, there is no richness that compares to the peace of finally knowing who you are. Then stop, breathe, and think, how many times have you felt like Clara? How many times has your worth been measured by the clothes you wear, or the house where you live, by your last name, your bank account, your appearance, or by the wounds you hide? How many times have you been silenced for fear of displeasing, for fear of appearing weak, or simply because you learned that your pain had no place in anyone's life? Maybe your story is not identical to Clara's, but if you have already been judged, if it has already been left aside, if you've ever cried in secret, you know exactly how she felt. And maybe right now, someone around you is going through this, without you noticing, without anyone noticing. So more than a story, this video is an invitation, a request. Look at people with more empathy. Listen more carefully. You can't see. Respect and appreciate those who keep going, even when everything is against them. Because it is not final what really makes us great. It's how we treat those the world insists on diminishing. Now it's your turn. Comment below. I have been judged by appearances, and it has left a deep impression on me. I know a story similar to Clara's. It was moving to remember. The truth can hurt, but it can also heal. Thank you for this video. Use these phrases as inspiration. Story. Open up if you want. This space is yours too. And your voice matters. If this story touched your heart, leave a like now. It helps this video reach more people who need to hear this message. Subscribe to the channel because here every story has a soul, has pain, has overcoming. And activate the bell so you don't miss the next videos. Some of them may change the way you see life and yourself, because sometimes the deepest truth is the one that almost no one has the courage to tell, but we're telling it here for you, for everyone who's been silent, for everyone who deserves to be heard.